Thanks, everyone. We'll start momentarily, just letting people enter the Zoom room. Should have had music. All right, it seems like we are ready to begin. So let's get started, everybody. Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, possibly good morning, depending on what time zone you might be in today or tomorrow. Welcome, everybody. My name is Nicole A. Watson. I'm the Associate Artistic Director at the McCarter Theater Center and one of the co-curators of Bard at the Gate. And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to our post-show conversation after our opening night of Zakiyyah Alexander's How to Raise a Freeman. Yay. I'm thrilled to be here tonight. Before we get started, I just would like to acknowledge on behalf of all of the staff at the McCarter Theater Center, we are on the land of the Lenni Lenape. We honor the Lenape and all Indigenous caretakers of these lands and waters, the elders who lived here before, the Indigenous communities today, and the generations to come. And it is Native American Heritage Month. So I hope we all find ways to support, recognize, and be in conversation with our Indigenous neighbors. I would like to make a few introductions. First off, Zakiyyah Alexander, our playwright of the night. Zakiyyah Alexander is a writer and a native New Yorker raised in Queens and Brooklyn. In addition to being a writer for both stage and TV, Zakiyyah is co-founder of the Kilroys, an organization focused on parody in the American theater. I should have mentioned that I'm keeping these intros brief so that we can have more conversation, but you can find out more about all of these amazing artists online if you don't know about them already. Next up, we have Reginald L. Douglas, who's our director this evening. Reg is a director, producer, and arts advocate dedicated to creating new work and supporting new voices. He is also the Associate Artistic Director at Studio Theater in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Reg. We have Luis Alfaro. Luis is a Chicano playwright, born and raised Blacks from USC, where he currently teaches, in the Pico Union District of downtown Los Angeles. Luis is also the Associate Artistic Director of Center Theater Group. I believe you said 4 months in, I think, which is the resident company of the Music Center of Los Angeles County, home of the Mark Taper Forum, the Amundsen Theater, and the Kirk Douglas Theater. We are also joined by American Sign Language interpreters, Katura and Candace. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay, let's get started, friends. Zakiyyah, my first question is for you. And I would love for you to tell me a bit about the history of this play, what inspired you to write it, the course of its development, what changed and what remained, and what it was like to revisit this play for Bard at the Gate this year. So we'll start there.
Hi, everybody. This is such an interesting 2020 now experience. Thanks for having me. I guess this play has been sort of a story that I think everyone knows. And I think over the years, thinking about how do we sort of talk about the effects of police brutality, I think sometimes we hear about it as someone else's story. And I think I was trying to figure out a way where we're invested in the characters who are going through this time period and part of Black America. And I think this sense that you're never safe is very close to our surface. And when I moved to LA and I started driving, I had a moment, because I'm a New Yorker who never drove and hates to drive still, but where I was driving and I was listening to the radio, which was some rap music, and there were sirens. And for a second, my heart stopped because I thought, holy shit, this is it. This is the moment. And I feel like I had a bit of flop sweat before I realized it was the radio. And I thought, this is the world that we're in. How do I communicate this in a way that people care about and see it as less of a political conversation and more of a story of one person. And so I was really into something I don't think I see very often on stage, which is a middle-class Black story, a story where there's enough food on the table, where everybody's loved, where you have a home to come to, where your grandmother's not part of the play. And what happens when the setup that we sort of know and have seen before gets turned on its head. I also think I was inspired to write this play because I saw a lot of plays on the subject matter that didn't affect me emotionally. They let me know intellectually what was wrong, but I'd never actually sort of felt anything for it. And I was trying to give myself an assignment of what happens if you go into familiar territory and somehow twist it on its head. So this show has sort of brief history. It's been workshopped a few times, it's been read, but this was actually probably the longest that I spent with actors working on it since I wrote it. You're muted.
I have to unmute myself. Couldn't get to the button fast enough. Thank you. I'm going to segue a question for Reg on what was it like working on this play in this digital medium on this platform? Any discoveries that you made while working on the play? What was it like to have to figure this out for this mode as opposed to the stage mode where the play should also be, I will say.
I mean, this pandemic's been so interesting in so many ways, I think, for so many theater artists. You know, I'm someone who's only been a theater director. And so this has really been a year or 2 years almost now of playing in different mediums and finding the similarities, the synergies, but also embracing the wild differences. And, you know, so much of the thanks tonight goes to this amazing actors. You know, I think one of the things that's been the great gift of this pandemic is the power of actors to translate a story. We always say in theater, beyond the footlights, you know, and I think they're now pushing it beyond this Zoom screen. And so a big, you know, shout out and lots of love to this cast for just diving in. And I'm a director that believes in getting out of a good actor's way. Like, you don't teach Meryl how to act. You don't teach Michelle Wilson how to act. You kind of let her do it and you get the joy of helping to shape that. I am obsessed with playwrights. I had a chance to work with Zakiyyah before. And so one, the script is so beautiful and awesome. And I also know Zakiyyah is such a warm presence in the room. And so really embracing, Zakiyyah probably has the greatest thought about what this line really means and what this moment really means, and being able to give space, even in the Zoom room, to whether it's through the chat or, you know, private text, or just a real juicy conversation with the cast about what are the what ifs of this world. And then the ultimate, you know, huzzah goes to Jared, Deja, and Shoshana and the team at Vidco, because, you know, I love designers. And so, you know, I'm gratefully don't have to be the sync designer and lighting designer and costume designer and sound designer in the 3D live theater world we would typically work in. And so it was great to be given this great opportunity from you, Nicole, and Paula, and Rosie, and your team to say, let's add in real design. And I was kind of like, okay, you mean like they'll change their glasses, like turn off their ring lights, and wow, it's a new world. And you're like, no, we can go even further. And so I think the great discovery or reminder is the power of collaboration, the power of trusting other artists to take an idea or an inkling of an idea and really expand it and into ways, and you know, into ways and ideas and forms that were truly a bit beyond anything I've seen in this Zoom meets theater platform, while still remaining true, I think, to the fact that this is a play. That this at the core was a stage reading of a play where the text is so much the thing, even though, you know, there's video design and elements. And so I say all that to say, I think the great lesson of this year has been try and embrace the new, but also I think remain really dedicated to the thing that hasn't changed, which is the power of a story to, I think, enlighten and entertain an audience, you know, to use empathy to allow people to connect with themselves and with other people is what I love about theater. And I think even in this medium, that doesn't change. If anything, it gets reinforced. And so that's kind of where I'm sitting with it today, you know, and I think we keep learning the what ifs of this form and these forms. It feels we learn something new every time we work on one of these. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, what you've articulated, and I'm going to now ask a question of Luis, and then we'll just open it up for all of us to be in conversation. I wanted to give everybody a personal question and then move on. But you've alluded to, Reg, like the thing you have talked about is the thing that we have committed to as artists in the theater, to try something new, to collaborate, to go even further. And I want to come back to that. But Luis, the question I'd like to ask for you is like, what has this year been for you in terms of making work? And then Zakiyyah said something interesting about how she gives herself an assignment. And as a writer, I'm curious, what do you think your assignments are? Like in what drives you in some of the work that you create?
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody. It's so good to be here, just to be in community with all of you, because I'm in Los Angeles. Are you in Los Angeles, Zakiyyah?
Yeah, I'm like,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
still, so I'm back.
Oh, fantastic.
Back
Great.
in,
Well, I'm in Koreatown, so land of the Chumash and the Tongva, and I'm really, really happy to be here to say that, I just wanted to remark on something that happened to me today watching the play, right? Which is I'm watching it in the privacy of my apartment, right? My very crowded, dense community. And I'm having a very emotional response to especially the end of this play, to be in the skin in this country. It really tore me open. And I think that had I seen this in a theater first, I would have a very maybe stoic, because I would be maybe afraid to share that. And I don't know how much I cried today. And I think I cried because I had an experience where a policeman stopped me and it was not a good experience, right? And I used those words, officer and sir, like I used all of those words that my father taught me, right? And so there was something very, very powerful going on in the privacy of my own home, in the trigger of this play, which is a good trigger, right? Because theater is so damn dangerous, and it should be. It should elicit that thing in us. So I will say that danger is a big part of it for me. I studied with Marie Irene Fornes. So, for me, it's about like pop, 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 pop. Things are popping, and I don't know where I'm going, right? And I think that that's a good place to go. But what I do know is that I am a political person because I'm a queer person of color. So I am always popping in the place where I want to change the world, right? So I think what happens is my pops are really about things like this beautiful play's view of, you can't talk about race if you're not going to talk about class. And it's so true, Zakiyyah, to do that, to be so conscious, to do that is so, so damn important. And to see us in ways that we don't often see ourselves, right, is really very powerful for me. So for me, it feels like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm popping off of the thing that needs me the most, which is the politics of this moment, right? But also I'm trying to just be present for the thing that's popping. And what was popping for me today was this notion of the architecture of this play, because it's about real estate. And I was meditating on this notion of the American dream. Had always been told to me as a very poor person, a very poor Mexican in this country, that the only way I would become an American was to own a damn house, right? And that's false. That's a false notion that I'm never, if I continue to just be a playwright, I would never be able to support, right? And so the play got me early because it reminded me that this dream is not my dream. And that was a really hard thing, because then as I followed the play, I was thinking that first act was about, for me, about the real estate, and the second act was about this abduction, right? About how to become the thing we need to be. So all of those things are popping in my head, and they're like the way I work, right? Pop, 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 right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been thinking about the play and not just the real estate, but the lesson in the play. And what really sort of stood out to me was that the work that the men in that play had to do to try and teach Marcus something, because the world itself wasn't going to change. Like I was really today was watching, and I was like, it felt like the duh moment of the thing, because I was like, right, he needs this lesson because the America that he's in isn't shifting. And I just really had to sit with that tonight. And And it just makes me wonder, sort of in the work that you're all doing, with your imaginations as writers and directors and producers, how do you navigate your creative process for putting an idea into the world of what the world wants to be, even as you're writing for a world that seems fixed? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would offer, I'm not a playwright, but I would offer something that, what you said is not news.
Yes.
So that can't be the event of the play.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least the plays I'm excited by, I want to have surprise, I want to have an action. And so to me, like the idea that a lot of people think I'm scary just for breathing is a given circumstance. To me, the thing to celebrate and make active on stage is my smile in the face of that. Do you know what I mean? So that's the thing that gets me most pumped about the power of theater, is to tell both sides of that truth. Like, yes, the pain of that reality, but also the resilience, the joy, the anyway of that. Which is so honest to me, and that kind of nuance, holding two truths at onceness, that double consciousness, that ultimately Americanness of two truths at once. And so those are the plays that excite me. And also I think the thing that motivates me to keep using art as a medium to express that, it's like, yes, I can give you the history book, but even more so, an artist can give you the perspective on what that history book felt like and lived like. And I love Luis's pops, that personal pop is also a political pop. And I think there's a really exciting way that theater in particular, for me, that live engagement, even in this version of live engagement, allows us to do as one whole. And that to me is the thing that makes me so pumped about using theater as the medium to do that work.
Yeah. No, the moment, I love the way the actor playing Marcus, when the way he said whiskey sour, right? That like every time.
The joy of drinking a whiskey sour.
Yes. Just living in that moment, it's really wonderful. I don't know if I cut anybody off, Zakiyyah or Luis, there.
I was just going to say, I write really violent plays because I'm writing about my reality, right? But they're love stories, right? All the Greeks that I've adapted, they're really love stories, right? And so that's always the thing that I think that's what allows these plays to get produced, is there is a belief that we might survive this moment. We might survive our prison culture. We might survive our gang culture. We might survive many things, right? But that love is the ultimate thing in this. So one of the things I enjoyed about the play tonight was these brief interludes, which I just like. I love that kind of writing anyway, right? But these brief interludes into who I used to be, or who I am, or who I was really beautiful and intense, because I think understanding the nuance or the subtext or the idea of why a character manifests the way they do was really, really powerful to me. I just really, really love that, because early in the play, I don't know if you did it on purpose. I'm sure you did. I think the son says, or somebody says, this is, if I die, it's because of you. And then I thought, oh, right? Like I was like, oh no, right? But I thought that was such an interesting moment, because I was thinking, I'm going to get to the background of this, right? I'm going to get to the background. And I think surprising us, and like Reginald was saying, being surprised into that moment and into these moments. And the last one came so late in the game, right? So beautiful. Even the end is a surprise, right? I can still be unpacking shit at the end and introducing myself to you, which is such a beautiful thing. The wholeness of this piece is not meant to be maybe at the end of the play, but really when I go home, right? So that's really good. That I just love that. I thought that was a very beautiful action.
Thank you so much. I think I'm a satirist, and my goal is to make you laugh. And I think I'm bored a lot, and I'm very bored with a lot of theater. And I think it's because I already know how you want me to feel, and I won't. If you tell me to feel a way, I'm going to feel the opposite way, or feel manipulated. So I think part of what I found, I think is my goal for both theater and television, is I am looking, I say this often in pitches, my goal is to get an audience comfortable and easy, and so that you laugh and feel like this is one type of show, one type of story, so that if I punch you in the stomach, you don't see it coming. And that's the only way that I personally experience any emotion for any story, is if I didn't get to solve the puzzle beforehand. And so I think structurally, integrally, what I'm trying to do with anything that I write is how to fuck with an audience so that they come to the same emotional response that I planned out without them knowing that it's coming. So I think even for the interludes really were like, I know that I wanted Marcus to have that monologue. What could I do to make sure that by the time we got there, it was really well earned? So I think it was Marcus's first that I'm like, oh, that's the story. Now, what do I have to do to make sure that you did not see that that was going to be the story? So for me, it's very structural, but I'm also really want to be, to get to a place where you can't stop thinking about the work. I would rather you hate the work, and at least then you like, that shit was terrible. I'm like, that's a feeling. That's something that you take with you. You're like, what the fuck was that? I would, have conversations about how bad something is and why it didn't connect to me. So I'd rather you feel one way or the other about it than nothing, so, which to me is the death. I felt nothing. I remember nothing. I can't talk about the work after I left it. It was, it was fine. That to me would be how you kill me. So I am looking to live in you forever. That's, I think, the goal of my purpose as a writer, is how can I needle myself in there, or the story, and for it to stick.
Do you write in order?
I think one of the things that sort of, I'm a big outliner, and I used to hate outlines. And when I was a playwriting professor, I really became a stickler for outlines, because it was the one thing that was never taught to me. And I had originally been just an organic writer. I'm like, I feel it. I don't want to box myself in. Let me just feel what I'm writing. And I think that all fell apart when I had a commission that it was like 100 pages I wrote, and someone said, but nothing happens. And I'm like, what do you mean? They talk this whole time. There's like beautiful language. Have you seen this character? And I had to sort of figure out what action meant. And I had to sort of learn architecture, which I think in turn allowed me to build my plays really differently, so that I think I'm really building some sort of structure. And that might mean that I start at the end, and I often know where I want you to feel, where I want the thing to live at. And now I sort of have to earn my ending, is often how I write kind of everything. If I know where I'm going, when I teach, I often say, you would not get in a car and just try to drive to Mexico. Like, you wouldn't do that. You would at least be like, it's south, it's this highway, maybe I'll get off and I'll experience some lands or go to a museum, but you wouldn't just drive. And I think now I definitely know when I'm headed to Mexico.
I love that, because in a way, one of the things I was thinking of tonight when it was so beautifully directed, Reginald, but I love the way it went action, movement, energy, action, like I think it never went back and started over. It kind of picked up from a pace and then ran on the pace. So when in the second act, when she's having her moment, her breakdown, I was shocked at like how rhythmic I was getting into the music of it, right? And then you changed the track on me, and I kind of love that. But I thought, oh, I wonder if she's moved scenes around, right? But I love the idea that you've structured. Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Reg, when you work as a director, how do you sort of look at structures of plays? And as you're talking to collaborators and designers, what was the conversation of making this happen?
I would say it's structurally, but it's also, I think, one of the things that's, I think, evident in a lot of Zakiyyah's work, and definitely in this play, is like, it's always a comedy until it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, you call yourself a satirist, and I think that was the thing you're speaking to, Luis, is like that, the Denise journey. It's like, and it's something we shouldn't take for granted, that we just don't see a lot, is Black comedic plays.
Yes.
That are purposely full of like great depth as well. And so I think for all of us, it was like, oh, this is different. Yeah. Oh, we have to use a different set of tricks to kind of get through this thing, because it was keep it arch and keep it up in a way that like many melanated actors don't get the chance to do at Manhattan Theater Club. So it was thrilling to be able to play in a different, form, I think, for the cast as well. I would say, I think everything's 10 minutes too long. And so in terms of structure, I'm always looking for how can we get there faster? I think like Zakiyyah, I get bored very easily. So I'm always a build it up until we can't, kind of energy. And a lot of the editing notes, Jared, were like, cut, pull, don't need the breath. The beats don't work in Zoom.
Yeah.
But I think it's a real testament to the script that, this is not like, we're praising Zakiyyah because it's real praise, but it's a really architecturally sound story that's purposely built in such a particular way that when you get to act 2, it's a different world and a different rhythm and you've earned it. And it starts in a completely different void and energy than, I just think there's so many structural things that are just evident in the script that like your job, I think ultimately for the actors is just do what's on the page. Which is also kind of hard sometimes, just trust what's on the page is enough. And I think for the actors, I have to assume based on the joy of the room and the rigor of the room, that was a thrilling challenge. Especially have to do that in your closet, or like in your bedroom while you're making dinner for your children. But I think it was a really fun challenge to not trust what's on the page because we knew it was right, but to actively do the act of trusting what's on the page is just to play it big and play it bold and play it broad until you can,
I just think that there's one thing that you said that I think why directing this play is so important is that without direction, everyone tries to make this into a real hard drama. And like every scene is like the weight of the world of like, what am I saying? And the like emotional response. And I think that's something I really learned with this play. It actually, I think the work is kind of exactly what you're saying, Reg, just not only to trust it, but to trust that it's a comedy, which I think no one ever wants it to be on the first read. Everyone wants it to be sort of like, let me tell you this story, son. And it doesn't work that way because I don't think it acts in duality when it is an emo drama. So I think talking about the comedy is a lot of the direction anytime I've worked on this play. And I think sometimes there's real resistance because it isn't funny. All of it.
Like one of the fun discoveries in the room or like aha moments for all of us was, I think, leaning into that and then activating it by realizing the reason you can play it as a comedy is because you're a survivor. Again, the given circumstance is that you walked home and 3 cops stared at you. That's not news. So that can't be what the scene's about. Right. The scene can't be, oh my God, the world is a little racist. And oh my gosh, my client thinks don't have on a wig. Like that's not the event of the scene. And so I think the minute you get past trying to make the realities of race in America and the realities of marriage and class difference inside of a transaction as big as real estate, and the weight of divorce. Once you get past those things as given circumstances, you do what most people do is you kind of find ways to keep moving, which I think is a fun way that keeps it moving fast. It's like, we don't have time to sit around talking about how bad it is. Right. We're hungry, so let's go eat dinner. I want to get back to the video game, and I think that was a real fun aha for all of us over the 2 weeks or 1 week of rehearsal we had.
Yeah. You've all mentioned in various ways the thing you don't get to do often or don't see often enough in theater. Zakiyyah, you mentioned at the beginning, you were like, I'm going to write about a Black middle class where everyone is loved and there's food on the table and the bills are paid. Reg, I think you mentioned, the stories you don't get to see a lot. And this, I'm sort of riffing off something Zakiyyah had mentioned, is that we don't often, I'll say it like as a Black artist, but maybe by extension, artists of color get to do contemporary work that's comedic, that has this kind of structure and style. And more often than not, we are workshopping plays that are historical or tonally historical. And I'm just wondering if anybody would like to speak to or comment on those things we don't get to see often enough. And I'll leave it at that. That's my very open-ended question.
Well, I will say that, we just had a call, I'm part of the Latino Theater Commons, which is this, very big commons that's housed at Hallround. And, our next conference is a call for comedy scripts. And, that is very intentional because most of the work that you see is not humorous, right? Because we're all wrestling with, survival in many ways. But I think this call for the comedy in our community is going to be so important, so important. And I will say the first 15 years of my career were all comedies, right? The way I made it into the regionals is with my gang plays and my prison plays and so that's not lost on me either, right? So yeah, writing a comedy, let's do that. Let's bring that back into the fold because that really is where our community really got built. That is where we built that next generation of artists and audience, right? They were coming to see these plays and really were enjoyable for them, right? So I think that's really, really important. Oh, Luis broke our news. Oh, shoot.
No, we are talking about how much we also just need more comedy in the world that is not I would say, punching down from white men, making everyone else the butt of the joke. Something we talk about quite a bit too, but yes. Yeah.
I guess I feel like, I think I write the thing that I don't see, but I think one of the things I was really struck with in the workshops I've had of this play with really tremendous cast every time I've worked on it is there have been a few times when especially the actor playing the lead, I forget the character's name, that Malcolm played. I don't know these people. But when the leading father character, I think there's been some difficulty playing it, and part of the difficulty I realized after working with an exceptional actor, I asked, who's been on Broadway, who's worked consistently, I felt like there was something going on with his read of it, and I asked, what's the last contemporary character you played? And he had never played a contemporary character. All of the parts that he's ever played have been historical, and I think that there is a style difference when you're in the past, not for all plays, but for many plays. And so one of the biggest challenges of this play is that you should talk the way you talk in the world. You don't have to have a special style of speaking, which I think I would say some plays really do call for, but this calls for this kind of talking, for you to sound the way you do outside. And I think that's been the most complex challenge that explained a lot of the problems that we were having when we began to work on it, that really allowed me to sort of go, oh, you've not had any baker's language in your mouth. You've not had to think about a backslash or things that just seem a Carol Churchill experience. You haven't probably even had an Audrey and Kennedy experience. And so I don't think I am any of those people, but it has been an interesting thing to sort of go, what are we teaching actors by the parts that we're giving them? And then if you do go to audition for one of those plays and you've never had that language in your mouth and you're coming at it wrong, it is a way to not cast you in it and say that you didn't get it. And so I think it becomes less about my play and a lot more about how are we training actors in this country to be in the world that we live in today, as opposed to being in the world we used to live in. And I think that's a really deep conversation that I wouldn't have known about had I not sort of entered this particular forum. I have historical plays, I have I'm in, contemporary, it's sometimes naturalism. I really feel like I'm a character writer. I used to be an actor and I was a character actor. So I think they all have a different skin, but this play is when I realized something that I hadn't been able to articulate before, that I especially felt in audition rooms.
Whoa, I was just thinking, wow, when you were talking, yes. When you were talking, I was thinking culturally that when we do comedies in our community, we get intergenerational, which is shocking. And tonight when I saw your play, man, dad talking to son. I mean, you're seeing it play out, right? And I was thinking, yeah, when we write our comedies, everybody shows up because we're clannish that way, right? At least us as Mexicans. So I was thinking that's the only time you see it in a comedy, that you see all the extension of family in its true expression, right? And in the experiences I've had in writing comedies, just that I've gotten produced, the center of my play is usually an older woman, grandma, or somebody, right, who is kind of the vessel that's holding the history, but is living today, right? And kind of having to deal with what's going on today. So I don't know, this is like a real beautiful a move tonight just by that too. Mother, son, dad, all of it, right? Very, very intergenerational. And we're looking at how different we are when they're telling him how to speak and he says, where am I going to speak like that? Yes, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Reg, anything? Sorry, I want to make sure I don't miss
Oh,
anything.
no, I'm just soaking it up.
Okay, cool. I'm going to start taking a few questions from our chat. This one is for Zakiyyah from someone who I know is a playwright as well, and is studying playwriting right now. And she writes, I really loved Marcus. He's the version of a young Black man I see in my family that I don't see a lot in this story. Wait, where did the question go? Sorry. The rest of the question, I think, was like, how did you discover Marcus and work on him? Oh, I'm going to find it again. Oh, here it is. How did you come to create this character? Why was it important to you to tell his story? Which I believe you've touched on a bit, but I just wanted to make sure I got the question into the space.
I mean, I guess like when I was a young actor, I was a kid actor. I think I felt like the parts for me were like in the hood. Like I had to learn how to sort of be like this badass that Zakiyyah, am not. But those were the parts that were sort of available that were fun, which was sort of like a completely different version of not everyone that I knew, but the world that I sort of came from. And so I guess Marcus is a full character, but for me, he is a character that everyone would love. And I think that's been the most important part, because I think that the deeper conversation is, can you fall in love with this young Black boy? Mm-hmm. And can you see yourself in him and his story, no matter where you come from, no matter what your race is, no matter what your class is, no matter where you live in the world? And I think that the way that sort of translated was through the video games, because it was about something else. It wasn't about anything but escapism. And it's an escapism that we all sort of know. If you're in Ohio, if you're in the hood, you understand what that means to sort of be with overbearing parents and need a reason to escape. And so, although he's a very specific character, I think he's extremely universal, and he's soft, and he's funny, and he has not been fucked up yet by America. And I think that's sort of the point of the last monologue, is that we watch it happen in real time. We watch the scars from this country happen to a character that hopefully we've fallen in love with, which makes us look, for those of us who don't know this experience, at it in a different way. So I think it's really also the acting. I think that's like a huge, it's very hard to find a genuine actor who can sort of hit all of these punches. And I think it's really hit in this production. But I think I want you to fall in love with a young man, and for you to see yourself in him, no matter where you come from. And I think that is really the purpose of him, because as much as he's a character, for me, there's a point to why this is so necessary.
Yeah.
Oh, and that scream at the end, right? That scream at the end is the crossover, right? From boy to man. And yeah, I think that's why it was so hard, because it happened so quick and so fast. So I got to stay in his youth, which, thank you so much, Zakiyyah. So beautiful. Like, what a great beautiful job, to keep him in his youth for as long as we could, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
There's a lot of appreciation in the chat for Marcus's tenderness and softness, and that we did get to be with him and that version of him for so much of the play. So you're getting a lot of appreciation for that, for him. There's another question that said, can you talk a bit about the moment at the end where Denise and Keith are back in the bed and she listens to why he did what he did, and then just says, I love you to him repeatedly. It was so layered. It broke me. That's a comment in the chat. And just if there is anyone, it's just a beautiful moment, the way you opened up this family to us.
I think this play for me, I guess one of the many things, there's about like 17 things it's probably about, but that I have rarely heard a Black couple say, I love you on stage. I don't know if I've seen a brown couple say it I don't know if I've seen any non-white people say I love you, honestly. I'm sure it's happened, so I wouldn't make a sweeping statement about the world, but I just don't think I see it a lot. And I think that for me, I could repeat that double the time, because I think just sitting there in it, I don't know why it does something. I actually don't know. I don't understand why it is visceral. Even in my head, I know that this is the right thing to do, but I don't understand why it works. But I think it's just that they love each other. And I think it's not a tragedy. They're not going to break up at the end. They're not going to divorce. She's not so mad at him that now they're going to split up. They're going to stay together. And I think that there is a soft power in that. In knowing that that wasn't the story that was being told of like how a couple broke up, but instead, I think for Denise, it's how she sees her husband, and she has been missing a part of him, and she has been just beginning to articulate the effect of today has been having on this man in a way that she wasn't able to do before this play. But I think it's just the act of love is Sonia Sanchez said to me once, I have a musical with her poetry in it. And she said to me once in a cab ride, the act of love is revolutionary. And I've always, I'm like, wow, you just said that. Like that was just a powerful sentence. But I think that it is. And I think it's so important to see everyone, but I think especially marginalized people loving each other. And that one act alone is I don't know, a very powerful statement. And I did not realize it, but I think really the goal of the play, this is the first place where the actors are allowed, there's 2 spots to sit with emotion, because I'm like, don't sit with emotion, just act, keep moving, don't stop. But there's 2 spots. It's the father and son hugging. And I think it's this moment are the only 2 moments where it's okay for the actors to cry and to really sit with something for a minute. And that's intentional, because hopefully it makes us as an audience member take that breath with them.
Yeah, it felt like, I don't know if I could just say this, but when I was listening tonight, it felt like every layer of the statement, I love you, was not a healing, but or a forgiveness. It was like, we're rebuilding, right? We're rebuilding in a different way now. And to be conscious of where he was at, and also the loss of the job and all that, to give each other that kind of beautiful support. But you're right, I was just thinking, those 3 words, we don't use them. We just don't use them. Why do we do that? It's pain. I'm going to start using them in Spanish, but I mean, it's freaking me out. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have such an obsession with the luxury of rest and love, and like who's afforded the space and time to sit and actually say things like that. And I just think everything Zakiyyah said it's something that is so, I think it's why historically we love, as a culture, we love romance, we love love stories, because it's this thing we often feel we don't have in our own lives, the way we see it in the movies and on television. And so often we don't see that expressed with people of color. And so it is something so personally powerful to me and truly political, like you said, Luis, to say, and like Sonia said, to me, it's revolutionary to sit and take the breath and the time to do nothing else but be in your bed with your husband or your wife and just look at them.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, there's nothing, there's no, you know, and like that is such a powerful piece of theater. I mean, we can all see it in our heads already. Like, oh wow, the lights have changed. We just sit with them, you know?
Right.
I think it's such a powerful stage direction and moment in the play because it's so surprising. Just everything we're always after as theater artists is like, there's the action. The action is to actually be still for once.
Yeah.
In a way that this world often doesn't allow Black women and Black couples especially to do. Just do nothing.
Right.
Just do nothing. Just sit down.
Right.
It's so powerful.
It really is. It really is. I'm going to take, I'm looking at the time. I'm going to take one more question for the chat. And then I have like a final question for everybody that I think might take us to 10:30 or whatever 30 of the time zones we are in. This is a question for Zakiyyah. It says, you mentioned that you're a born and raised New York playwright writing this New York-centered story. How has relocating to LA and now working in TV and film impacted your art or craft as a playwright? How has it been for you to return to this play and the rehearsal process with actors after theaters pause during the pandemic? Or rather relocation online to an online platform?
I'd say I took a pause long before the pandemic. So I don't know if it was the pandemic that like brought my personal career to a stop. I just have felt like I love the room, but don't love the circumstances. And I felt really different for television. But I think the relocation thing was really interesting because I think Los Angeles is the most segregated place I've ever lived. And I wasn't expecting it when I got here. I moved, my first neighborhood was Silver Lake, which everyone said was the Brooklyn of LA. And maybe it is, but it's Williamsburg. And it is, the only people of color were the gardeners. And I have not experienced that in a place where I was living personally until I got here. And I didn't have a car. I got a job before I came here, so I didn't have a car at first. And I got an apartment that was only a mile from where I was living, from where the studio was. And so it was like very short. I could have walked, but I took the bus. And the horror of someone working on a television show with theoretic means taking the bus was something that I just did not even know. People were offended that like this kind of class conversation that I was like, there's a version of LA where you take 3 buses and it takes hours, but this took 20 minutes. So the class conversation connected with the race conversation, I think is so specific here. You can, if you have enough money, you don't have to see a homeless person unless you pump your own gas. You can completely live in an arbitrary version of reality where you don't have to associate with anyone who is not in your economic tax bracket. And I don't know what that's like. In New York, the homeless person lives next to you and is your neighbor, and you see him every day and you worry about him when he's not there. And like everyone's together, so rich and poor and all races, and it means all the food. So this is just a segregated city. I don't know what it's done to me in terms of my work. I think the way that it's really affected me the most has been that television has helped me write quicker. And I think in a way that I really languished for earlier in my career as a playwright, I think it helps me essentialize and move faster. And to sort of smash out things in a way that I wouldn't have known that I had the possibility to do, and actually would have challenged you that that's not how I should write, that that's not good writing. And I think it's been more TV than Los Angeles. And I think theater, I feel like, is in my bones, but I feel probably less and less like an active participant. So anytime I get to work on this play, it feels so surprising and brand new because it still works. And I think the thing that's been the most surprising about this play is I wrote it 5 or 6 years ago, the very first draft. And I thought, oh, I wonder if this will like not be relevant soon. Like if it is a play that, you know, it isn't the story that's being told anymore. And I think the thing that has been possibly the most horrifying is that it seems like it will always work. And this is the one play that I would love for it to be a dated play, for it to be something about the past, and we've got to sort of work to make it a history play. And it's been really shocking and surprising. I didn't know how it would feel after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, after this sort of moment in history and Trump and the insurrection. I didn't know if it would land the same way or if it would feel like we're over this story. But I am more disturbed that it seems ever present and possibly more relevant in a way that I wouldn't have been able to guess, because I feel like I was writing this in the shadows, I think a couple years later after Trayvon Martin, and that being like such a story. But I think all of those names have been names that have passed through my ether, and it's just a crazy thing that there will be more names added to that list.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was one of when we were reading for Bard at the Gate, the sort of moment where the timeliness, as you mentioned, of the play felt it's like, I wish it wasn't, and here we are. And so grateful that for the writing and the play itself that allows us to continue to have another version of life in the midst of what Reg has called the given circumstances of America. I wanted to, as we sort of come to the end of our evening, so when Paula created Bard at the Gate during the COVID times, which we are still moving through, she programmed the first season, plays that she felt like she had to see. And here we are, starting season 2 with Zakiyyah's play. Just had to see it. And those of you out in the world, please tell everyone to see it. My final question to the three of you, because you are all artists, art advocates, activists, you wear many hats, and you are all champions of new plays and writers. So I'm just curious, if you were programming a season, which some of you actually do, who are the writers, or what would your ideal season look like for you if we tabled all the things we have to sometimes think about? But who would be in your Zakiyyah season, or Luis season, or your Reg season? I'm just curious. Who should we be knowing more about if we haven't already?
Terrifying, but I'm going to throw this out because I want to extend Zakiyyah's version of Los Angeles. I live in a county of 10 million people who speak 224 different languages, right? 700 neighborhoods. We haven't begun to tell our story. We haven't begun to hear the story of Los Angeles. We don't know what that story is because we don't even listen to the languages of this city. And I'm not even included in those dialects, the dialects in those languages, right? So, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about the 65,000 unhoused Angelenos in LA. That is a play that we must immediately tell. That is a story that we must immediately tell about LA. The Middle East, Los Angeles, is very, very important. The Central American Los Angeles is very, very important. So I'm really wrestling right now with this notion of what our erasure is, not just in my brown community, but in many communities, right? So as a good example, I will say that the first play of our Douglas season is by a young man named Benjamin Benet, who is still in school. That was really, really intentional on our part. And I know that it was a little scary for folks, but it also starts as a comedy. And, so I'm just coming back to Zakiyyah here. It also starts as a comedy, and it is about this period that we are in now, but we never hear that man's name, that awful man's name. But you do see an orange glow, a very awful orange glow, which I hope will be taken as a humorous, right? But just to say that in a way, for me, maybe it might, because of my age, I feel like I'm ready for that next generation. How do I pave that thing? How do I get that door open? I feel like I've opened a door, and now I feel like I have to knock down things, right? But it really feels like, yeah, that's this next generation. They got it. Just do it. Tell that story. So in a way, Benjamin is a good example of the story that needs to be told right now, because it's funny, because it's about the languages of LA. And I get in trouble for this, but I am a regional guy. I'm a son of the city, the center of the city, and raised in the poverty of the city. That's the story that we need to tell. And we've never told it. We have never told it. And there are 10 million of us.
It's funny, this is gonna sound like a cop-out, but I'm gonna yes and Luis, which is, to me, your job as a director is to center the audience over yourself. And so it's hard for me to answer this question without place. So that sounds like a cop-out because I don't like, you name names and you get mad, people get mad. So I'm not gonna name names, but I do think something Luis is saying is how do you center the audience and the community both on stage and off, which I think is at the core of the plays and playwrights missions. The thing that's empowering their pen is something bigger than act two is what excites me. The whys of the writing are leading the way, and those whys are rooted in something beyond this. They're interested in engagement and activation. And so Zakiyyah Alexander, it's program Zakiyyah and Luis and Benjamin, who's brilliant.
Yeah. Yes.
But I think they're thinking about whose story are we telling and to who are we telling it and with whom are we telling it, to me is the way into thinking about curation for me. It's very personal.
It's like I'm the furthest away from programming anything or thinking about it in a real way, or that I have any, I haven't thought about this that much except for this question being posed. Luis, I really hear you about the homelessness. I have never seen homelessness like this except in India. And I was like, oh my God, when I lived downtown for a brief moment, I remember I kept seeing all this dog shit everywhere, and it slowly dawned on me that it was human. And I was like, where are we? Like, what is happening? But for me, I think about this. I'm not afraid to name names because I don't have any control over everybody, and like no one will be offended by me. But the three writers that really stand out to me that I feel like I haven't seen, and I know why, but the writers that I would love to see are Naomi Wallace and Naomi Izuka. I don't even need to be on that season and in my fantasy. I think that there's a scope of language and diversity in those women that really, they should be the most produced writers in the country. And I don't know, except I do. I don't understand how that's been allowed to stand, and how even younger artists at the beginning of their craft could surpass these women with bodies of work. If I had to do a 3-person playwright season to fully diversify it, I would probably have Marcus Gardley as the third. And that to me would be an excellent season. A Naomi Wallace, Naomi Izuka, and Marcus Gardley, I think would hit, depending on their body of work, every note that I think has been missing in American theater, in terms of both characters, style, story, and relevance, and timelessness. So that would be my dream season that I would come back to the theater for.
And just to name something else that's there, because if we're saying seasons are 5 to 8, there's the breadth of being able to see an artist, which you did so beautifully with the Adrian Festival, Nicole. It's like the breadth of an artist, because inside Naomi Wallace's canon, Marcus's canon, you're going to get so much playing with form and style and content. That I think that's the other thing I think we've been robbed of as a field, is the chance to see the breadth of an artist's imagination.
Yes.
We are so often reduced to this one play and this one thing you do, and I think there's something so liberating about those 3 artists and what they've done with their, like you said, their body of work, and the idea of having a season that is those people in conversation
Yeah.
willing.
I am here for that season. And then when you only do that one play,
Yeah.
depending on how people respond or critics respond to that one play, then we are robbed of the chance to experience all the other plays, you know. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm just reading some things in the chat. May How to Raise a Freeman see many real, vibrant productions across the US. Yes, thank you, Tom. Agreed. And this story reached multitudes of communities that need to hear this truth. Again, for those of you watching, one of the reasons Paula wanted to do this was so that there were some of us who knew How to Raise a Freeman. More people need to know this play. More people need to know Zakiyyah's work. I want to thank Zakiyyah for saying yes to this. For when I know that Paula thought she was going to do Bard at the Gate once and maybe didn't think that there would be a season 2. And here we all are continuing to gather and try and put plays out into the world on this platform so that more people have access. We are coming up on time, so I want to thank Zakiyyah, Reg, Luis. I want to thank Candace and Katura. Thank you. I want to thank everyone who tuned in tonight. Please spread the word. And I also want to let you know that the next part, this play is available. Please spread the word. And the next play that we'll be doing will be Jose Rivera's Sonnets for an Old Century that Jose himself has directed. And once again, I'm just thrilled to be in conversation. Nothing makes me happier than talking to artists. And so thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. And we hope to see you soon. Thank you.